All right, well, welcome, guys. My name is Rachel Sanders. I'm the volunteer program coordinator here at eCYBERMISSION, and welcome to the first CyberGuide Live Chat of the year. So I will ask that you guys leave yourself muted. You're welcome to turn your camera on, but if you have questions throughout the chat, you can drop them into the chat box, and one of our staff members will respond, or we will address it at the end if it's to a cyber guide. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my staff who is here first, and then I'm going to turn it over to the cyber guides to introduce themselves. Carrie, you can go ahead. Or
Okay,
Catherine.
I'm Carrie. I am the STEM education coordinator for eCYBERMISSION. And I think we were supposed to tell the favorite.
Yes, yes. Tell us your favorite ice cream flavor.
That's my favorite part. My favorite ice cream flavor is chocolate chip cookie dough.
It's a classic.
Hi everyone, I'm Catherine. I am the NSTA Assistant Director of AOP, and my favorite ice cream flavor is strawberry cheesecake. Sorry, Rachel, I know you.
Okay, the cheesecake is redemption. The cheesecake's the redemption part. Naomi, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Naomi Dews, the volunteer recruitment coordinator, and my favorite ice cream would be pecan.
Solid. Faith.
Hi, I'm Faith. I'm the Senior Communications and Marketing Specialist, and mine is probably cookie dough, like two desserts in one.
I like it. I like it. It's a well-rounded bunch. Well, now I'm going to turn it over, and Ryan, we can start with you. If you will just, obviously your name is Ryan, but if you'll tell them where you work, what you do, and what your favorite flavor ice cream is.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Ryan. I'm a third-year medical student at Virginia Tech Carilion School of Medicine. I'm studying to be a doctor and then hopefully go on from there to be a general surgeon. My favorite flavor of ice cream is mint chocolate.
Okay. That's a hot take. All right. Alexis.
Hi, my name is Alexis Marsh. I'm a fourth-year PhD student in bioinformatics and computational biology at Iowa State University, and my favorite ice cream flavor is probably Oreo cookie.
Okay. Dr. Garrett.
Hello, everyone. Gregory Garrett. I'm a 20-year student at the Army Research Lab. I have a laser spectroscopy lab where we study materials. And my favorite ice cream is Parlene's and cream, kind of like caramel and pecan, sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I can call it pecans, right?
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you. And Ms. Hema.
Good evening, everyone. I work as a systems engineer for DASA, which is part of the headquarters of the Department of the Army. So I work on formal policy and guidance to help out the Army community. And my favorite ice cream flavor is mint chip as well.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And we will go ahead and get started. I'm going to, my favorite flavor is anything chocolate. I'm kind of surprised that people weren't chocolate people here, but I'll let that go. So I'm going to go ahead and start this PowerPoint, and we're going to go through it. And if you have any questions, like I said, just drop them in the chat box. Just make sure you address it to everyone and not just to staff Rachel, because I can't respond right now. But if you have questions towards the end, we'll open up the floor and you can unmute yourself and speak. All right. Can somebody give me a thumbs up that they can see the PowerPoint? Perfect. All right, so today's presentation is really just going to be about getting into eCYBERMISSION and kind of what we are, what we're about, how to be successful, and what kind of projects we're looking for. So we've already introduced our cyber guides, and I just wanted to have this cute little logo that Faith made for us. And so I want to do a quick refresher. I don't know if some of you guys are coming back or some of you are new, but we're at a fully online STEM competition, and we're free to students in 6th to 9th grade. You work in teams of 2 to 4, and it's a project that focuses on a community problem. There's the potential to win savings bonds, and about 10,000 students participate each year. So it's a national program, and it's all across the nation, and it's getting students involved in STEM, and the teams are from 2 to 4, so it really can just be your friends, your classmates. It can get you paired up with other students in your class. And then the importance of teamwork, and this is not a solo competition. You have to have a teammate, at least one, and the maximum of 4. And it's really important to get that going from the start and establishing your team rules, expectations, assigning team roles and responsibilities, and setting up schedules. So I recommend, if you don't already have a team, you look and try and find people with like-minded brains as yours. So if you all have a great engineering background, you can lean towards that. A great science background, you can lean towards that. Or find someone who you're passionate about similar things. If you're passionate about the environment, maybe find someone in your class or another child your age in your neighborhood who's passionate about the same things. And each team will also have a team advisor. So that's just a trusted parent, teacher, community member that's going to help you guys out, kind of just be that oversight that you're needing. I wanted to ask a couple of our cyber guides a question, and what is the most important factor in making a successful team? And I'm going to ask Alexis if you would go ahead and take that one.
For sure. So one of the key factors that makes the team successful is clear communication. So making sure that everybody understands what the direction is for the project, what people have agreed to do. So you want to make sure everybody understands when you explain, like, okay, we need to build part A in this way, you want to make sure that when your friend goes home and works on it, that part A is going to be built in the way you described. And if you're analyzing data, you're going to want to have like the emails. If you're communicating over email, you're going to say clearly, like, what did you do? So when they get the graph, they understand like what you're actually showing with your results. So I'd say that would be my number 1 is communication. And number 2 is being respectful of everybody's ideas and making sure that you listen and you understand like what they're talking about before you kind of get into a debate on what idea you want to pursue, and make sure that you have those open, respectful lines of communication.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciate that, driving home the respectfulness part of it. And, in life, most jobs, you're going to have some teamwork. So it's a great example and a great practice of putting those principles into that. Hema, did you have anything you wanted to add in that, and what you think makes successful teamwork?
I think, Alexis really hit the nail on the head in terms of communication, but something to also consider when you're working with teams is that everyone's excited about what you're working on, right? We're all here to work together to try to accomplish a goal, and it makes it so much better if the teammates that you're working with are also excited about the work that you're doing. So making sure that everyone is really happy about the idea and is excited from day one all the way through the conclusion of the project will make working as a team much easier, and it'll make some of the tough times and setbacks you may have throughout this process a lot better when you have a team that's willing to support you as well.
Awesome. That was beautiful. Thank you. I really do agree that, having team members to support you, sometimes you're going to hit brick walls or you're just going to be exhausted. And it's great to have someone who can kind of lift you up, encourage you, and keep you strong until that finish line. So that's great. Thank you. So one of the big things that I wanted to discuss tonight was choosing a project. So at eCYBERMISSION, you are trying to find a project that you are going to work on that benefits your community. And I want to stress that it's your community. So it needs to be a somewhat into your community. For example, I live in Georgia and we have a huge mosquito problem where I live. And we all know that mosquitoes can carry diseases and they also affect other parts of our ecosystem. So I could maybe come up with something to deter mosquitoes, and that would be very relevant to helping my community. However, someone may be out in Nevada or Alaska with the super dry air in Nevada or the cold temperatures in Alaska, that may not really be a problem for them. They may not have the mosquito population like we do. So you really want to dive deep into your community to try and find out what's going on. And if you don't know what's going on in your community, I really recommend you pick up a paper, you go to a local website, you talk to anyone on the school board, or you go to the community center and kind of just poll people and say, hey, what do you think is really plaguing our people? What's plaguing our animals? What's plaguing, you know, our environment around here? And then also looking to see if an idea is new or the project has been done before. So that sounds kind of like a scary concept because you're like, well, a lot of things have probably been done before. However, if you come with a new lens and different type of research or a different type of method, then that's a brand new idea. And then what topics are of interest to my team? Just kind of like how we've always talked about before. You really want to pick something that your whole team is interested in, that you either have a passion for or you want to learn more about. So you may pick something that you're not super knowledgeable about in the beginning, but by the end, you're a master at. And then what are areas of strengths and weaknesses for your team? So, for example, I don't have the biggest strong suit in math. It's unfortunate. I'm trying to improve that, but I do have a pretty good strength of using my hands to build things. I love to work out and restore furniture. I like to work out on my farm. So that could be something that I could be of use to my team. You may not want me to use the calculator, but I can dig us a great hole. And can my team get this project done thoroughly in time? So this is a long competition. March 6th is the deadline to have your mission folder in. So this isn't a project that you're going to take on that's going to take, you know, a couple of days or a couple hours or one afternoon. We really expect a high level of quality of submission into these projects, and that is going to take some time to go into that. And most projects, especially scientific inquiries and engineering, you're going to have to build a couple prototypes, or you're going to have to conduct an experiment over time or have a larger sample size. So it really helps make sure that your experiments and projects are quality as well. And then another question to ask yourselves is, have you looked at past winning mission folders, for example? So I'm going to get into that a little bit in the next slide and just kind of show some of the ideas that have either won or been runners up in the past competition. But I wanted to pivot and ask Dr. Garrett, how did you find your field or your passion? Like what led you to that?
Well, the research area that I'm in right now kind of came through my work in grad school, where I learned how to use lasers to study materials and stuff. And so that kind of became the basis, the tools that I learned how to use. And then going through my career, I then applied these tools to different problems. So right now I use the lasers to study materials that are what we call ultra wide bandgap semiconductors. Whereas when I started school, we used the lasers to study other materials. And so I guess the example, this kind of goes back to the what are your strengths sort of things. Like in school, I learned to use lasers and optics became my strength. And so when I went out and started my career, I kind of looked for jobs where I could use the lasers and my optics background to contribute to the research.
That's awesome. I like that the laser started out being used for things differently and kind of evolved as your career went on too. That's super cool. And not many people can say they worked with lasers. So that's always, I love to watch the students' eyes light up when you're like, I work with lasers. All right, Ryan, if you wouldn't mind answering the same question, just trying to discuss how you fell into your field or your passion.
Yeah, sure. So I kind of stumbled into mine by accident. I was actually an engineering student for several years in aerospace, and I just signed up for an EMT course on a whim one weekend and did that. Fell in love with medicine as a career, and so decided to change my whole path. Go into that. I got a graduate degree in biomedical sciences, and while I was there, I started doing research in post-surgical infections, and that really got me interested in the field of surgery as a whole. So, yeah.
Hey, that's cool. I like that. You started out with an engineering. So always STEM though. That's pretty cool.
Always STEM.
And I just want to ask all of our cyber guides, because I really think it's interesting to find out how people fell into this field or their passion. Hema, if you want to take that question too, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so mine's a little bit of a complicated journey. I actually have a background in chemical engineering. So when I started my career, I worked in materials research, kind of like Dr. Garrett, and I was working on sealants and adhesives technologies. And then I went on a rotation to support a program office and realized that's the kind of environment that I wanted to be involved with, being able to provide program support to, you know, our soldiers and our civilian folk who are developing these really cool capabilities and technologies to support the military. And so I kind of pivoted and did a 180, and now I'm working as a systems engineer at a headquarters level and really still providing that program support to our Army programs and liaisons. So that's how I fell into this career, and I absolutely love it.
I love when people love their job. That's such a great feeling. Thank you. And Alexis, if you want to talk just kind of about your journey as a PhD student, how you fell into that field.
Yeah, so mine's a little bit complicated as well. So I started out in undergrad doing organic chemistry research, and I realized that without the guidance of computational work, it can be kind of inefficient and it's expensive and can be hard on the environment. So I ended up changing to computational chemistry, and then that went into, it's very closely related to bioinformatics and computational biology. So that's what I am doing my graduate degree in. I started out in a similar project, but we do rotations as well. So I did a rotation in a lab that works with software engineering and systems biology, and we study microbes. And it was really interesting since a lot of decisions now in the scientific setting are made with that foundation of kind of what computational data is saying. So there's a little bit of guidance, because again, it's expensive, it's time consuming scientific work, but there aren't really great ways to determine that the software is working correctly, because science is hard and we often don't know what answers are. So I got really interested in that. I like working with the microbes, and they're pretty cool, really interesting. So that's what I ended up sticking with.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So it's actually really cool that you guys get to see how different all of our CyberGuides backgrounds are. However, all of their knowledge kind of comes back to STEM. So I'm glad you guys are here today. So I was talking about the past winning mission folders, and I wanted to go to the next slide and actually show that these were some of the winning projects that were from the previous years. One was lowering the number of car accidents involving deer, generating clean energy, reducing the impact of harmful algae blooms, reducing the number of infants dying in cars. You know, last year we also had one that was a cooling system that was just using fans and ice water, but they actually had made it a pretty took a pretty conceptual idea and made it into this great prototype that was helping people with heat strokes. It's truly amazing, and I'm really excited to see what our students have this year to offer. And if you guys need just a little bit of inspiration, we'll talk about that later and where to find that on the website. But I just wanted to show you guys just kind of the level of what these children and your friends, your peers, your students are doing. So this is what I was referencing before. If you needed a little extra help picking a project or trying to understand what would make a project good, your Student Help Center will have a couple links. It has these two links, the Inspiration Station and Selecting a Topic, and I really recommend clicking those before you've totally, started on your project. If you're still kind of going back and forth, it's great info. It's 2 different pages to click on, but the Student Help Center also has activity sheets, videos, kind of guides on what to do. It's a great resource. So I would really recommend you going through and clicking through each one of those links, but those Inspiration Station and Selecting a Topic are really going to be beneficial to you when you're starting your project. And like I discussed before, the winning mission folders, I just wanted to highlight where that link was. It's at the bottom of the page, and I put a little red circle around it. So you can actually view their mission folder as well and see exactly how they answered their questions and how they were scored. And we call our projects a mission folder when they are submitted. I'm sorry, I should have explained that a little bit earlier, but all of your projects are going to be your mission folder. So I wanted to discuss two of the paths we have, and I'm actually going to have Carrie come in and help me a little bit with this, as we have a couple changes this year that we haven't had in the previous years. But we still have our two paths, and our two paths are engineering design and scientific inquiry. So when you have your project, you're going to decide what you fall under, and that's going to be based on your rubric you're being judged on and the questions you're answering. So engineering design is designing and or testing a prototype and solving a problem. Scientific inquiry is developing and testing a hypothesis and answering a question. However, this year we're going to have two different engineering paths that kind of fork off. You're going to be in the engineering path, but your questions are going to be tailored a little bit differently in your mission folder. And I would love for Carrie to hop on and kind of explain those changes this year.
Yeah, so that's something exciting this year is we've redesigned the mission folder from previous years in order to get a little bit better answer completion and get more focused answers. But one of the things that as Rachel mentioned, that did change is if you were to choose the engineering design path, mission folder path, then you would either design and test a prototype, or you would create a model or drawing of your solution to that community problem. So there are actually two mission folders within the engineering design path. So that's something to keep in mind as you're working out what community problem you are going to try to solve or explore. Do you want to, if you want to solve it, as Rachel said, you would choose the engineering design path. And then within that, you would either say, hey, I'm going to build this prototype, I'm going to test it, and I'm going to see if we get some answers or some solutions to this problem. If you were to choose the scientific inquiry path, then you would have just the one mission folder and you would go through the research design process. So those are the two paths, but then three mission folder types, two within the engineering design. The other one that besides the prototype within engineering design is creating the drawing or the model of your solution to the problem, and then answering questions about it and how you envision it might work or it might be effective in solving the problem. One other thing to keep in mind that Rachel was mentioning before is when you look at those mission folder examples from past winning projects, those are the old mission folders.
Yes.
Because we have rolled out this new mission folder this year, we don't have any completed folders to show to you, but I want to tell you that it is pretty similar. We've just broken down some questions to be more specific, so we get more specific answers, and just a little better word choice or vocabulary use so that it's easier to understand. So it's just a redesign, not a completely different mission folder. But when you go and explore on the website those past winning projects, keep in mind that those are from previous years and we do not yet have the new mission folder to show as examples.
Thank you, Carrie. And if you guys have any questions, again, you can drop them in the chat. You can wait and unmute yourself after when we have Q&A, or you can email missioncontrol@eCYBERMISSION.com at any time. And if one of our staff members will just drop that in the chat as well. Anytime you have a question about your project, and when it's kind of like rules based or what you should do if you don't know which path you're taking, we're happy to help you on that. And this is really something that we would want you guys to do before you get halfway done in your project. You want to decide which rubric you're following, which path you're following, and it's good to have that from the beginning. And speaking of the beginning, I kind of wanted to just ask our cyber guides if they had any advice just for when students are just starting their project or brainstorming. And I wanted to just see what they had to say. Ryan, if you wanted to take that, I would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, sure. So I'd start by just saying, don't ever convince yourself that there are no problems left in whatever field you're particularly passionate about. There's problems everywhere. No matter how well researched it is, or how, I guess, inexperienced in the field you are, there are always little things that can be fixed and improved upon. So my advice would just be to kind of follow your passion. And if you're really lost, do your best to maybe find somebody in the field that you can talk with, maybe a cyber guide if you want, and ask them about maybe some things that are not quite known, things that they could look into, and that would be, I think, a great way to go.
Awesome, thank you. And I'm going to ask Dr. Garrett, do you have any advice for students just starting on their projects?
I have lots of advice, but I'll try to keep it short. Congratulations, you're starting early. That is a great point to be at. At this point, I would like to tell you that you do not have to come up with your full project right away. I think that this part 2, when we get to the rubrics, this is something you could maybe spend the next 4 weeks on. You can study a broader topic, and as you learn about this broader topic with your friends, maybe you, and hopefully through that study, you will learn what the specific problems are, what the interesting new things you can try to do, try to build, try to test out. Everybody that's going to wait until next February to start is going to be so rushed. They're just going to start doing something, and that's going to be the generic experiment. So congratulations for starting early. Spend the next 4 weeks or even researching a topic and filling out part 2 of this rubric without knowing the specific thing you want to do. And in doing this part 2, you will come up with a new interesting idea that nobody has tried before.
Thank you. And he's totally right. If you guys are here tonight, first of all, give yourself a pat on the back. You are the early birds. I'm so proud of you guys. And then before we move on, I just wanted to ask Alexis or Hema, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I think it was covered pretty well. I just would like to reiterate, like developing a good plan and understanding of your project before you jump in and start collecting data is really a great way to go. And also don't think that you can't then alter kind of your path or your plan if you realize stuff isn't working along the way, or you get halfway there and you're like, wait a minute, this would have been better. Research is all about adapting and overcoming. So I just keep that in mind as well.
Awesome, thanks. And Hema, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, just something quick. Don't hesitate to feel like you have to discover something new or discover this new, animal or species out there. I mean, a lot of the times, engineering and scientific inquiry comes from taking existing processes and existing methods and just modifying them and finding a new way or a better way, a more efficient way to do the same task. So that's also another way to look at it too. You're not always trying to design something new. You're trying to, reinvent something that's already existing as well.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that, because one of the things we try and drive home is failure is success in science and in engineering, because hey, this doesn't work. Let's go back to the drawing board and let's take the knowledge that we've learned and go on to our next try. So I really want to make sure you guys know, if your hypothesis doesn't work or your prototype doesn't work, it is not a failure. It's knowledge that you've learned, and you can go again and try again. So thank you. I appreciate that point. So I did mention briefly that the rubric designs are on there, so you can see exactly how you're going to be graded. And on the next slide, I have actually just a couple sample questions. You can kind of see what the grading looks like. How is something excellent? How is something good? How is it average? How is it poor? And so all of this will be online, and it's great because you can kind of go through it before, during, and after, so you can get an idea of what you think the judges will score you for that. And we'll talk about virtual judging a little bit, but that's kind of when we're going to go into the timeline, and I'll just talk you through what the competition looks like. So these are examples that I just pulled from the website of the rubrics. So you can see where they have the mission folder question. For example, let's look at what role did each member of the team play? So the judging criteria clearly explains how each member of the team contributed. Then the maximum amount of points is 10. So for 0 points, they didn't explain their team member roles. For 5, they listed some descriptions or provided a little bit of info, and 10 is a detailed description. So you can kind of see that that same sort of grading system goes for each specific question. And there's a lot of, the rubrics are big. These are just snips. So I really recommend you guys looking through all of that, having someone print it out, highlight it, and go through it a couple times throughout your project is going to be something that's super important. And I wanted to ask, I know that you may not have a rubric in your job, but you definitely have guidelines, rules, or ways that you're supposed to conduct your experiment. Let's start with Alexis. Do you have any experience in your day-to-day that you have to follow strict guidelines or processes?
Yeah, so what we want to do is make sure, so I don't necessarily specifically have anything like too formal, like Rachel said, nothing like super formal, but we do have like how data has to be shared and stored. So like when I'm working on a project and I'm generating data, my advisor wants to be able to look at it. Maybe a collaborator needs to be able to look at it. So you kind of have where you should share it. It needs to have some documentation, so you know, like, I use this tool with this data set, and this is like the experiments I ran. So definitely that level of detail would be one thing. Having your notes well organized, so when you go to write like the method sections for a paper, like everybody knows, okay, we use this version for the software, and you don't have to like go back and try to figure out like, what did I do from like, you know, maybe a couple months ago. So definitely having clear documentation of what you did, why you did it, what questions you were trying to answer are definitely criteria that my advisor and I think most advisors have.
Awesome, thank you. Hema, did you want to add something to that?
Sure. I mean, I pretty much live and breathe, you know, standards and policy on a day-to-day basis in my job. So it is a very structured way of doing things day to day. And I'm also critiquing and grading how Army programs are sort of complying to these policies as well. So it's definitely something I'm very familiar with. And I would just say, and reiterate what Rachel has said, to really look through the rubric and see all the components and things that you need up front, so that when you go to fill out the mission folders later, you're not surprised by a new tagline that you might have not seen. So it's definitely good to see the full picture before you start diving into the project itself.
Awesome, thank you. I know Army guidelines and policies are pretty stringent too, so you
Yep.
understand the importance of following things. Dr. Garrett, I'm sure you understand that as well. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Dr. Garrett?
I think the most important thing that we're often reminded of is that you need to write up your results. It's important that you fill out these mission folders. It's you can't just go do your experiment and do the fun part and then go home. You have to share, and it's kind of difficult. I mean, it's sometimes it's a little stressful. I mean, you have to put out your ideas and share them with everybody else and kind of be judged a little. But that's an important part of this process, is you have to tell. I mean, and then again, what we talked about earlier, like even something that doesn't quite work, there's a lot of information there that's useful to people. And so you need to write that down and share that with everyone so that they don't make the same mistakes, or maybe they'll have an idea of how to improve upon it. And so it is important to not just do the experiment, but to write it up nicely.
Thank you. And Ryan, I'm sure you have some experience working in the medical field, that you guys have some very, very stringent laws, policies, practices.
Yeah, so I'll say medicine it's a combination of art and science. And we pretty much always, like I'll say 95% of our time, we are running very strictly down guidelines that we have to follow to the letter. There's a very precise way that you work up pneumonia, let's say, and you follow the steps, and that brings you down the ladder of what exactly, what bacteria is causing the pneumonia and how you treat it. But we do encounter pretty often a point where you kind of step off the edge of that guideline. The guideline is no longer clearly telling you what to do. And that, I think, is a great point to bring in the science side of things. That's where we go, all right, We don't know what the guideline says to do here. So this is where we need to set up an experiment and figure out how we can extend this guideline further, come up with some new advice. And so I think that that is an excellent place if you're looking for ideas for a project to go looking.
Awesome. Thank you. I like that. That's kind of like the creative side coming in and problem solving, thinking on your feet. So that's a cool aspect I didn't even think of. All right, so this is actually what the mission folder is going to look like. So I'm going to go through this section pretty quickly. And if you guys have any questions, again, please feel free to ask at the end or email, but you can see the different tabs, and that's where the questions are going to be. You're also going to have the opportunity to upload any type of file you have. So if you have drawings or pictures or PDFs and stuff like that, you'll be able to upload that for the judges to see. So you'll still want to answer every mission folder question and not just say NA or, see attached. You'll want to give a full answer, but also mention that you do have attached links. So you can kind of see what a question would look like on here. And a lot of the questions have little prompts, and they'll give you either helpful tips or questions or links or things to think about. So I recommend always clicking on, that's the inspiration station link we discussed. So it was great when I was saying, if you're wanting to pick your project and see if it's good for your community, and then here it is when it's asking essentially the same question. So I recommend you guys clicking on all of those links. And this is what it's going to look like when you've uploaded things to the different sections, which is a lot of times people upload pictures that they've taken out in the field doing their experiment, and that's really cool for the judges to see. And then you're going to submit your mission folder. So once it's submitted, it cannot be edited. And I think your team advisor actually is the one that has to submit that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie or Catherine.
Yes, that's right. Your team advisor will submit it, do the final submitting.
Perfect. And we're going to actually talk about that in just a second, about the guideline, and I'm sorry, not the guidelines, the timelines of everything. But I just wanted you guys just to kind of see what the mission folder looked like, just so you can see what to expect. And then again, along the right-hand side, there's the resources, and there's that Student Help Center link again, which I really recommend everyone going to check out. So this is the timeline I was referencing, that registration's open. So you guys are, if you're in here, you've already registered for the competition. You may have even started on your project. However, you have until March 6th to submit your project. And then virtual judging occurs on March 13th through the 27th. So we have a very large amount of virtual judges who register, and they judge 3 mission folders each, and they'll give an average score after. They'll give scores, and an average score for your folder will be taken. And then it kind of bumps up into state, regional, and national judging. And then national judging is an in-person event where teams are invited to come and present their project, have workshop opportunities, meet with mentors. It's a really cool special opportunity that some of our students get to enjoy. But even if you're recognized at that state and regional level, it's such a cool thing. And I think I've seen students who've come back years after, maybe not reaching that level, coming back and then leveling up. So I really would encourage you guys to go and to do that. So that's really all we have today to go over. I do want to open up the floor to questions from students. If we don't have any, I do have some just kind of good advice questions I'll ask for the CyberGuides for those who are going to be watching the recording. But I wanted to open up the floor. You can send it in a chat, or you can unmute yourself. And I'm sorry, I know I talk very quickly, so I'm happy to go back over any slides. Okay, let's see. All right, I'm going to read this question out loud in the CyberGuides if one of you guys would like to answer. So me and my partner want to make or do something that helps healthcare, but we don't know how to do that. Do you have any ideas, tips, or know how we could help? Ryan, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So, obviously at this state, a lot of people kind of think of medical research as requiring patients and treatments and all of that. And that's clearly not something that is, at this point, but there are plenty of other problems that don't necessarily involve that. Like we've heard about a couple of medical devices already. Well, you can call them medical devices or safety devices. So we heard about a cooling device, I think, earlier. And then another one that is really a problem in a lot of areas is bacterial growth. That's kind of what I do my research in, well, one of the things. And there's a lot of different things you could look at with this, like specifically, are there certain types of surfaces that grow bacteria more readily? And maybe those would be types that we wouldn't want to put maybe in a cafeteria. That's a great idea. Or, other types that would maybe inhibit bacterial growth. That would also be a good idea in there. And so those are kind of, I think, great ideas personally, is like something in the bacterial realm. Yeah.
I promised myself I wasn't going to do it, but I did it. Thank you, Ryan. Alexis, do you have anything you wanted to add? Just, I know that you work in a lab, and maybe where these students can find some inspiration.
Yeah, so I do obviously a lot with computers and computational data. So one thing you could maybe do is look for publicly available data sets if you wanted to see, like, oh, what, time of year do you see like a certain type of increase in like maybe accidents, and maybe realize in like where I'm from, the northern northern half of the country, you're gonna see a lot more in the winter, and maybe that's with like elderly and shoveling their sidewalks and slipping and falling. So you could do something like that if you could, if you wanted to learn how to wrangle data, and you could get a publicly available data set. You could maybe start there. You could also again, maybe a little bit tangential to healthcare, but maybe something like a community senior center. Maybe you could see like, what kind of issues is that population having? Is there something like you could maybe do for like a cane or a walker that would make it more usable or more accessible, or something along those lines would be a couple ideas I would have.
Awesome. Thank you. Hema or Dr. Garrett, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what Ryan and Alexis were saying. It's because obviously during this project you won't have the opportunity to work with live patients. There are other opportunities to explore, publicly available data, creating medical devices, or any sort of equipment or item that can help somebody with a medical issue as well. Alexis had mentioned a different type of cane to help with walking. You could do something that would cool people down in the heat when they're outside. Instead of having those horrible little portable fans, maybe attach that to a hat to help people cool down. So there are many ways to try to be involved with healthcare and influence that without necessarily working with live patients.
Sure. Dr. Garrett?
Yeah, I think it's this point is a great opportunity for you to bring in the community aspect of the eCYBERMISSION. You're starting early, you have the time. Go visit healthcare with your advisors and your parents. Go out and learn about what in your local community is a concern or a problem that people are trying to solve. It doesn't have to be a big problem. Maybe you go to the senior care living and somebody complains about something, and you think, oh, maybe I can design something to help make that a better situation for them. And so again, you're starting early, great. And I think it's a great opportunity. And this is the point at which I think it's easiest to bring the community aspect into your research, is to go. This is where you're going to find, you have your broad idea, go out in the community, and now you can narrow it down to something specific that you can work on.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's great advice, bringing back into the community aspect. And just to piggyback on what all of our wonderful cyber guides said, really just, look back into your community, whether that is going to a healthcare facility with your team advisor, or looking at news articles, looking up at your libraries, kind of just see what's going on, if there's any nonprofits in your area and what areas they focus on. And I wanted to ask Carrie or Catherine if you wanted to answer the question for the guidelines for gathering data.
Yes, I was just getting ready to type something in, but I would
That'd be good for
recommend,
everyone to hear it. So
yeah, I would recommend going to the Student Help Center, and there are lots of resources. There is a link called Analyzing Your Data, and getting some activities, at least a start practicing gathering data and analyzing data, graphing and all those sorts of things, if that's along the lines of what your question's asking. The other question, surveying professionals in the field that the group is interested, that's an excellent way to get to know what the STEM professionals do, and they might be able to give you some ideas about what's needed in that particular field, or what might impact the community, or something that they're working on as well. I don't know if that answers your question, but maybe the CyberGuides can also give some ideas.
And I wanted to also add that we will be having more CyberGuide live chats on various topics. So you'll also get that opportunity to continuously interact with our CyberGuides. And we have the message board platform. We kind of had that last year, but this year we're trying to have CyberGuide profiles. We're really trying to increase our student interaction. So if you have any question, any hour of the night, you can post on that message board, and that will notify our CyberGuides if any questions you have, whether about your project, STEM careers, or just STEM advice in general. Does anyone have any other questions? I'm going to give just a minute before I turn to our CyberGuides for some parting wisdom. And again, if you guys don't feel comfortable in putting your question in a chat or asking it loud, please feel free to email us. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I would like to end our session by each of our CyberGuides just giving a piece of advice, whether it be a student's journey in STEM or their project, or just kind of what you would like to know, what you would have liked to know at their age. So Ryan, if you would like to start.
Yeah, sure. I think I'm going to give one that we probably heard before, but follow your passion. You know, it sounds kind of corny when we say it, but we've now got several, people up here that are in the scientific fields. And I think most of us did not wind up going into the thing that we thought we were going to in high school. So, I wanted to be an engineer, and now I'm going into surgery. And there's a long process that all of us have gone through. So just follow your passions wherever they lead you.
Awesome, thank you. Alexis?
What I'd like to say is science and engineering, it's really challenging for everyone, and you might have had a section that's really, you pick up really quickly and you don't have to work too hard to understand, and then you might get to another section that you have to spend, twice the amount of time and effort, and that's normal. That's everyone who's studied any type of STEM field has experienced that, and that's showing that you're really growing and you're learning a lot of great information when that happens. And just always keep that growth mindset, that the challenge is a good thing. The challenge is showing you're mastering something really, really cool, and to kind of keep that enthusiasm, keep that excitement. And yeah, it's an awesome field, and just stick with it and don't kind of get discouraged by the challenging times, because there's plenty of really awesome times too.
Thank you, Alexis. Dr. Garrett?
Again, congratulations for starting early. I would like to, again, aspects of eCYBERMISSION that sometimes get overlooked. The community aspect, again, we're trying to, the judges and the program itself designed around trying to help your community. And one of the questions was about surveying professions in the field. I think my advice now is you're starting early. We have at work, we always talk about subject area experts, people you can go talk to about your ideas to try to help you out with what you're working on. And now is a great time to do that. It brings the community in again. I mean, don't be afraid to talk to people in your community about what you're thinking about doing and what their ideas are about or what their advice is about what you want to do.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Garrett. And Hema, if you will take us home.
Just two pieces of advice from me. One is don't be afraid to fail. Many times, and I can speak on behalf probably for all of these cyber guides, you know, the first thing that we did in the lab, we did in research, it probably didn't work out. And then we tried again and we tried again and we kept going. And then we all turned out to be very successful after the fact. So don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to try new things. Because you never know what you will learn from those failures and also be able to gather as you work towards those successes as well. So that's my first piece of advice. And then second, like Dr. Garrett mentioned, is really leaning on mentors for support. They obviously have, you know, more knowledge and can provide some insight that would be really helpful as you're working through the eCYBERMISSION process. So those are just my 2 cents.
Awesome. Just your 2 cents, but they're great advice. Well, I really appreciate everyone coming tonight. I did want to see if Carrie or Catherine, if you had anything you would like to add before we sign off for the night.
I would just like to thank everybody for joining us, and thank you to the Cyber Guides. Excellent advice, and I hope all of you get off to a good start with those tips and tricks in mind from them.
I know I was like writing down life advice for myself through that. So great job, guys. And again, if you want to ask these specific Cyber Guides questions, again, you can go to the message board and ask. And especially if you address it to them, I will make sure that they get that and can answer you. And I hope that you guys will join us for our next CyberGuide Live Chat. All of our CyberGuide Live Chats are on the website, the date and the topics. They'll all be on different things. All right. And with that being said, I will let everyone go and enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Nice work.
Agreed.
No.